What if I told you that the best miniature painters in the world are actually really great painters? I know, sounds obvious, but please bear with me. There's an actual point hidden in that statement. When first learning miniature painting, we're usually taught miniature painting techniques as if they're something wholly different from two-dimensional painting techniques. We learn to recess shade and edge highlight because the models are too small for natural light to give enough visual depth. Instead, we simulate the light to a degree with our paint. This is of course all correct, but most miniature painters never conceptually move past painting a model when they should really be painting on a model. The model is your canvas. Traditional painters don't have the benefit of an actual three-dimensional object to help them define shapes. Instead, they conjure them out of thin air using lighting and color. The best miniature painters have learned to study lighting like traditional painters. And if you learn to think like them, it'll take your painting to an entirely new level. But before we dive into our artistic study, we'll need a suitable canvas to work on as well. If you are anything like me, you were blown away by the release of Baldur's Gate 3 this year. But it's actually not the CRPG that I've put the most time into. That would be Pathfinder: Wrath of the Righteous by Owlcat Games. So when I heard that they were making a CRPG in the Warhammer 40,000 universe based on the Rogue Trader tabletop RPG, I was just... I've been playing since the alpha released early this year, but just this month, the game fully released. So to celebrate, let's build the ultimate bro, Abelard. This kit bash is going to primarily rely on the Tempestus Scions kit and the Imperial Agents Boarding Patrol, with a few bits from the Cadian Castellan thrown in as well. From the Scions kit, we'll take the Tempester's greatcoat and one of the torsos with the clean-fronted breastplate. I'm just going to assemble this one as intended. For the legs, we'll be turning to the Eleusidian Star Striders and taking the bottom half of the Void Master. He unfortunately doesn't have the tall boots Abelard is typically depicted with, but it still fits the naval officer vibe. Shave it down to fit the torso, and there we go. I'll be taking the Power Fist arm from the Castellan kit and adding a little green stuff to the shoulder joint to adjust the angle, but otherwise no major modification needed. For the right arm, I've taken the plasma pistol from the Castellan kit and taken off the cuff. This required a little bit of shaving to get it to fit where the Tempester dagger usually goes, but it worked very nicely once I got the angle correct. It is crucial that we do the head right. After searching through many boxes, I found this head from the Imperial Navy Breachers kit. The head shape is good, it has an ocular implant on the correct side, and it even comes with a built-in mustache. Nice. The hair is not correct though, so after shaving it all off, we'll need to sculpt some swept back hair as well as a beard. Put it all together, and there's the unyielding beacon we all know and love. When I finished the model for my last video, the Morty Glory video, I was a little disappointed in how it turned out actually. Something about the way it came out just felt flat, which is the exact opposite of how I felt with the model before that, the Halloween special. And this is in spite of the fact that the Halloween special took me much less time to paint. It was just so full of life and had such a strong atmosphere. Of course, they're not a one-to-one comparison since the Halloween special was sort of like a mini diorama. But nonetheless, something in the back of my mind was just eating at me about it. How could I have spent all that time glazing the smoothest blends I've ever done, including flashy effects like the power sword, and spending so much effort making every little detail perfect and still have the result feel so underwhelming? The answer hit me while I was walking Franz one sunny afternoon. It was all about the lighting. Daylight lighting conditions are actually very harsh most of the time. Smooth color transitions from very light to very dark are rare in the real world. Objects in direct sunlight basically have a light side, a dark side, and then a very small area of transition in between. And objects with sharp edges often have no transition at all. This was something I even mentioned in the Halloween video. Remember, even in bright daylight, you usually only get full illumination from one angle. Traditional painters know this too, and they will often use lighting to do the heavy lifting in terms of defining objects. If we take a look at the concept art for Abelard and we zoom in, you'll see that the brushstrokes are very evident, and they go from light to dark very rapidly. But if we zoom out, we see that the overall piece looks natural. Because of the way the artist chose to use light and color, our brains can kind of fill in the gaps. Let's kick this off by tackling the greatcoat and see if we can put our observations about light into practice. I'm going to start out by base coating in a mix of black and Rhinox hide. The eventual look we're going for is a very dark brown, almost black leather. So this dark brown will end up being our darkest shadows. I am not going all the way to black because shadows in real life are rarely ever truly black, especially not on a sunny day. And so going to black in your shadows will rob the work of visual depth and make it look a little cartoony. For the next step, I'm going to go bold with the lighting. I'm planning to use Abelard as an officer in my guard army, so I'm imagining him being deployed by the rogue trader to lead from the front lines on a desert world, standing in stark sunlight. As such, I've mixed up a warm gray, which I'm going to apply to basically every part of the coat that I think will be bathed in direct sunlight. This is going to give us that harsh light side, dark side effect. Not only will this be visually very pleasing, it cuts down on some of the work we have to do, since now we only need to blend the boundary between light and dark rather than all over the coat. Once that's taken care of, our job is to start bringing up the highlights and bringing down some shadows when necessary. On the dark side of the coat, I'm doing some very gentle highlighting into dark gray. On the light side, I want to be a bit more aggressive, but not before I start doing some light weathering and distressing near the seams because apparently I can't focus on one task at a time. Okay, back to highlighting. Like I was saying, aggressive. The coat is in very direct, very harsh sunlight, and I also want it to look a little shiny. So we're gonna go very bright on these highlights, almost to off-white in a few select spots. I'm pretty satisfied with how that's looking, so it's time to move on. My next point of order is to paint the plasma pistol, which is going to involve some non-metallic metal and glow effects that aren't really in the scope of today's video. But don't worry, I will be doing deep dives into these topics in the near future. For now, please enjoy this short painting montage. Let's quickly fill in the interior of the jacket. This section of the model should pretty much entirely be in shadow, judging from my reference photos, which makes it fairly easy. We can just base coat in a deep, cool red and gradually bring out some of the highlights on the raised surfaces. Since this section is not well illuminated by the sun, it's going to pick up a great deal of glow from the plasma pistol. So I'll put down some very thin layers of purple in there and then highlight into screamer pink mixed with a bit of white. It's time for the Navy uniform, and I think this is a perfect opportunity to demonstrate how you can use lights to imply shapes without needing to go crazy on the color blending. Let's start, as we always do, with a dark base coat. I'm going for a mix of Vallejo Imperial Blue, GW Nagaroth Night, and a little bit of black. Once that's all filled in, we can go to the illuminated side of the clothes. I'm again going to be bold and cover the light parts in a bright, somewhat desaturated blue. I really love that he has such a nicely creased pant leg. The angular shapes are going to let us make huge jumps in value without it looking weird at all. You might be thinking I'm crazy for putting so much bright blue on what is supposed to be dark navy clothing, but let's take a look at a real-life example. As you can see here, the sections receiving direct sunlight are very bright, and the sunlight is almost bleaching a lot of the color out of it. That's why I chose to make this big leap, and I'm gonna go even brighter for the highest highlights. As long as you keep your light source and intensity consistent across the model, you can make these huge jumps in color, and your brain will recognize what's happening and conclude that the true color of the material is somewhere between the brightest and darkest parts. It does, of course, help if that mid-tone is present in the appropriate places on the model too. We can finish off the blue clothes by including some cast light from the plasma glow in the darker areas. Most of what is left to do is the non-metallic metal on the breastplate, the power fist, and all of the gold details. These will be getting their own videos. I'll be doing a non-metallic metal basics video on the main channel focused on how I did the breastplate, and the non-metallic gold will be the first Patreon exclusive tutorial. In the meantime, let's rock out to a very metal montage. Let's talk a bit about the face. Strong lighting across the face is key for a dramatic feel. You'll see this done all across the artistic world, from film to photography to paintings. The actual process of painting the face will be very familiar to you by this point in the video. We'll start with our darkest shadow color first, which I'm going to be getting by mixing a dark flesh tone with some blue. I've noticed that shadows on bright days tend to reflect the sky a bit, so on a clear day you'll get shadows tinted blue and purple. We'll now base coat the light side of the face with a bit of tuskor fur mixed with some of that same blue. I'm mostly going to ignore the dark side of the face and focus on bringing up the highlights on the illuminated side. We'll be working our way up into Cadian flesh tone, then into sunny skin tone from Vallejo. For the final highlights, I've even brought it up into off-white. Skin is a bit reflective after all, so we can go very high with the highest highlights. I did also add in some violets under the cheekbones and near the nose to give him some lifelike color. Now we just need to fill in some of the final details: the hair, the implants, the gloves. I do think that the light-dark method that I was using to paint a lot of the sections of this model helped speed them up quite considerably, since I wasn't spending so much time blending. Despite that, the project did still take a long time. I screwed up a couple parts and had to redo them, and I'm not super experienced with non-metallic metal, so that took me quite a long time to figure out, especially the power fist. I redid that like 3 times. Normally I would skip showing the basing on a model like this because it's very basic, but I did attempt a little bit of a cast shadow on this one. Did it work? I don't know. Let me know down in the comments. Well, that's it for today's video, everyone. What? You wanted to see the finished model? All right, if you insist. Thanks everyone for making it to the end of the video. I hope you were all a little inspired to maybe rethink something about your painting and try something new. In addition to being much faster than spending all of your time doing the smoothest transitions you can, the right approach to lighting can make your minis look dramatically more, well, dramatic. If you enjoyed the video, please like, and if you want to see more content like this, subscribe to the channel. If that's not enough for you, or you want to support the channel, please consider joining the Patreon. There you'll get all kinds of behind the scenes content, audience polls to help decide future videos, access to a Discord, and you can gain access to Patreon exclusive tutorial videos. Thank you all once again, keep on painting, and until next time, I'll see you on the tabletop.